in advance. Could Gillian Sheard come forward, please? Feel free to sit down if you prefer. Stand if you'd prefer. It's fine either way.
Okay. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Gillian Sheard. I've been a member of Richmond for 9 years. When I first moved in, I could see a need for neighbourhood support, as I had been encouraged by Nairi Button. Most of you may know her, who was a great support for me in setting up neighbourhood support for Avalon Street. And I have also been a volunteer in the Christchurch area for 37 years, and I want to thank the New Zealand Girl Guides for that. I have given to the Christchurch area and the community for 37 years, so that's just a little bit about myself. I am, sorry, oh yes, we put that up. How do we go to the next one? Oh, let's see, okay. My main point, one of my main points is the Stanmore Road crossing, and some of the councillors will know about this. Stanmore Road by the Blue Tiki and Sideline Bar, we have a pedestrian crossing that is very dangerous. I have got a petition that I'm doing by hand. It's not an online one anymore. I have got over 500 handwritten. I have spoken to most of these people in person. I will stand at the pedestrian crossing getting signatures. I'm going into the businesses and into the bars and speaking to people. People are giving me stories. I know of people that have been hit, that have been injured on this crossing. And I have seen some... I actually first contacted the council in 2016 and was flobbed off. I got told to, excuse me, I was actually told, come back in 2007, March 2017, we will be able to see you then. And I thought, okay, radio. So I gave them a bit of grace and I said, right, came back in 2017, I spoke to councillors, I spoke to a road engineer, and we've had a camera out and they're saying, it's too quiet. I actually spoke to Barry, a road engineer, just in the last couple of weeks, and he said from the office, it's too quiet, it's not busy. We've had statistics saying that it's not a very busy area. And I said, oh look, I'm sorry that you hear that. How about coming out and seeing me? How about coming out and seeing Richmond? Come on to where the rubber road meets the road. So he did. And I was really sad to hear that on the phone. So he actually came out. His eyes were opened. He met. I grabbed some locals off the street. I said, have you had issues with this pedestrian? And they said, yes, this has happened. I've nearly been killed. One lady has said, I waited for 16 cars to go past here, and the 17th stopped for me. You know, we had, I can show you down, this here happened. Another car stopped by and stopped on the pedestrian crossing. And I said to him, I thought it was illegal to stop on the pedestrian crossing. And he said it is. He was actually embarrassed. I said, why are these cars stopping on the pedestrian crossing and waiting? I realise we have roadworks and that's holding up some things at the moment. But why are cars waiting on the pedestrian crossing?
But is that bus stationary?
Stationary? Yes.
So it wasn't just driving by?
No, certainly not. Certainly not. And I have contacted businesses, business cars that are waiting on this pedestrian crossing. So we are asking for, I have seen this pedestrian crossing in Huntly, of all places. I went up to Huntly a couple of years ago and I saw this pedestrian crossing and I thought, fantastic, look at it. It's got the zigzags at the side, it's got the wee bars, you know, poles at the side. We could have this in Christchurch. I actually mentioned it to the councillors and said, this would be a good example to put actually around all of Christchurch. It was sort of rubbished a bit, I felt. And I thought, well, okay, right. It's going to cost too much. It's going to cost $70,000. We don't have that money for Richmond. We don't have that money. And I said, how much is a life? How much is your mother? How much is your sister? In Worcester Street, you've got 6 raised crossings, 6 raised judder bars between Stenmore and Fitzgerald Ave. That's $420,000 that you've put in Worcester Street alone in that little section, but you won't put one of these in. And the other option that we're looking at is lights at Stenmore Avalon Street, but it's too much of an issue. It's too much money. The other thing we were looking at originally is to help out New World, which is part of our community, because we were looking at 2 crossings, which is going to cost you more, but let's do one, maybe the lights. No, it's going to cost too much money. The council is still saying. So we're also looking, we want either for the community to be safe, but it's still costing too much money, and the council don't get back to me. I have sent a number of emails, a number of questions, and councillors and the community board do not get back to me. I had Barry, the engineer, out on the 2nd of May, and his eyes were opened. We went down to Rudy's Cafe, about 5 doors down. He stood on the street, could not see the road pedestrian crossing. He was surprised, very surprised. He said, we need something done around here. Let's move some signs. Oh, I can get that done. Nothing's been done. We actually got 1 extra sign. When I say nothing's been done, we got 1 extra sign. Instead of moving some signs, moving some road cones, he's added a sign. And nothing's been done. He was going to get back to a couple of us to give us some options, but nothing's been done. No surprise. No surprise. And I'm very disappointed.
Well, look, what you've done is you've raised and highlighted the issue here now at the long-term plan hearings. We are considering, because it was one of the questions that we specifically asked in the LTP, was whether we should be...
Can I keep going?
No, because you've come to the end of your time.
Sorry.
So I'm trying to wrap up, and what you've highlighted is something that we have asked people to comment on, and that is the priorities around some of the traffic issues. Yes. So it's for road works and also for traffic safety issues. So, and we have specifically asked that as a question. You've raised the issue around a particular corridor, which actually, as we've heard from the previous submission, has got other challenges as well. Yes. In terms of traffic that's been diverted. But when traffic gets back to normal, then some of the directions of travel and how people get to Stanmore Road will change. So it's a corridor that does need to be looked at, and you've highlighted a type of pedestrian crossing which we should be considering. So I think you've made a very powerful submission. I'll just tell councillors that the photographs are on the hub, so that this particular presentation's been loaded onto the hub so that people can see it. So look, it's been a very good submission. Thank you very much, and we will take that into consideration when we look at the LTP.
Okay, we do have other empty properties that do need looking at and do need racking up. Yep. That these need filling.
And you are absolutely not the only one to raise this as an issue with respect to Richmond. We've had very strong representations from the Richmond community. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
Okay,
thank you.